Alright, so we will start now. We have the honor to have Tomasz here from Poland. He is from the Technical University of Krakow. He worked for the Department of Telecommunications and he has a really good background in programming mobile devices. And this short course, which as you know will last for 9 hours, we have 3 more hours tomorrow and 3 the day after, has to do with iOS programming. So you will go through all the basic things that you will need in order to program an iPhone actually. So thank you very much. And start.
Thanks. Okay, so I will start from my first slide. I know generally about some of the background in programming. So, Objective-C is, as I told previously, kind of extension of the C language. So, first of all, I would like to tell something about functions, variables, types, and identifiers, comments, and operators that are available still in C. They are also used in Objective-C. After that, I will say something about some differences, what can we do, how we can create objects, how we can create classes. Also, today or maybe tomorrow, I would like to show you how we can use Xcode for programming. There are some possibilities to have some laboratories here, but I think problem maybe not problem, but if you want to create application for Macintosh, the best idea is just to have Macintosh, buy Macintosh. So you should be the owner of Macintosh. Of course, if not, you can try to install a virtual machine of your Linux or maybe Windows operating system. And there are some different versions that we don't need to break some rules, of course. And you can install some version because Macintosh generally is in fact OpenBSD system, okay, plus some graphics. So I think it's good to install the virtual machine with similar with some extensions. After that, you can download and install Xcode because you are a developer of Objective-C applications. Okay. And you can see in that slide that Objective-C 2.0 is currently based on the C99 standard of C language. So if you know something knows not about it, you know that this is the extension of that standard. Next, NCC standard official for that language was released in December 1998. In C language, generally, we can see variables, types, and functions. You know that we have C language, we have some structures, of course, no classes, but there is a C++. So C++ is in our, how to say, 2 different ways, okay? C, after that, classes in C++ and classes in Objective-C. There are some differences between these languages. Okay, part 1. Okay, function generally in C language, because some of you are familiar only with Java, so you have any background in C, so you should know that in Java language the basic unit is a class. Okay? There are some not functions, but we can call them methods that are inside classes. But in C language the function is basic unit. Okay? Now in Java generally we have packages. I have many against, but now there is a popular name, Java libraries. In fact, it's a package. Library for me was the group of some functions, C language, Objective-C, or C++. So when where the function is basic unit, okay, we can compile it, and store into library. Whilst I prefer the name package for classes, basically unique in Java, but of course Java library is also common name for that. Okay, according to variables, type and functions, similar in Java and C, we have to find good identifier. Identifier letters, digits, of course, and underline characters. There are some general rules similar for many languages, so you should know that identifier cannot start with digit, of course. There's case sensitive. In Objective-C, of course, it's case sensitive also. All characters are significant. There are some languages, there's some limits of some number of characters, but not in Objective-C, of course. What else? Of course, we know that we cannot create identifier that is C language keyword. There are some C language keywords here. So, if you are familiar, you know some of them. If not, you can see. There's some list of some keywords, and you cannot use, of course, this name as an identifier in Objective-C and C, of course. Okay, when you want to create a variable, you should declare it and define it. Okay. There will be some information. What is the difference between that? There is completely difference in this language than in Java, especially for some elements. So when you want to introduce some name into the program, generally we can say that is a declaration. It could be declaration of variable as well as declaration for the function. And you can see declarations of some variables and declaration of some functions. Okay, you know that in C language, C++ also, and Objective-C, there is not only declaration but definition. So it's good to be strict, yes? So there's declaration, but more, there is also definition. Why? This is only declaration, not definition. In Objective-C, you can see that we can distinguish two groups of some sections that we can divide some declaration of some elements from implementation. Okay, maybe next. You can see that X is a variable of int type, A, B, C, D, of course, are variable of float type. You can read it that X in that case is the function because of the braces on the right side of this identifier, and the returning value is integer. Y is also the function with one parameter of int type, and of course it will return no value. Okay, so char, int, long, float, value, and void used for some functions and identifier are described in that slide. Okay. Next, what is type? Type specifies the nature of stored data. So the most important is to know that how many bytes of memory must be reserved for some variable, and how to interpret this part of data. Okay? Because in many cases, float and integer have the same number of bytes, but the structure is completely different. The problem is sometimes in C language and C++, not in Objective-C, there is no problem is in Java, because we, in many systems, we can try to get, but the best idea is to use size of operator to know how many bytes will be reserved in given machine, given operating system. Okay, so size of. in Java, we know how many bytes is per different type. So there's big difference, and it's good to know about it. Many students decided not to use size of operator, but it's just a mistake. So try to use size of operator if you know how many bytes will be reserved in a given machine. Okay, and this is information about it in that slide. So some 4 bytes, at another group 2 bytes only. Okay. General information about type. So we know how to choose good identifier, we know what is type, how to declare variable, we know how to declare a function, and now we can go to definition. So definition is not only introduction of a name into our program, but it's also associated with memory reservation. Okay? According to this solution, we can know that definition is therefore a declaration, but not vice versa. Okay? So all definition is also a declaration, but not all declaration could be definition. So it's much more. We can also know that we can declare many times identifier, but definition could be done only once. Okay. Next. We know that it was declaration, but in fact it's definition. Because in C language, in C++, Objective-C, we can not only tell about what is the meaning of this identifier, but also the system will reserve memory for this identifier. Okay, so you should know about it. We also know that the value of newly created variable is undefined in C language and C++. Very completely different in Java, when the definition is postponed to the first process of initialization is sent to first line when we want to set some value to our identifier. Okay, so when you are programming in Java, you should initialize this variable if you want to use it. Okay. Next, examples of variable definition and with its initialization. So you should remember that in this moment we can create this variable. This variable will be created, and this is a value that will be stored in that memory associated, assigned to this identifier. Okay, the first line is just a declaration. Declaration because it's only introduction of a name, identifier to the program, but there is no body of the function. If the body exists, it means that it's definition. So also, definition includes some declaration part, but not vice versa. Okay, so this header of the function, this is a body. Okay, we have some examples. Of course, you know it's very simple for you. If the function returns a value, the comment return must appear in the code. So some of you have known any previous experience with any programming languages, so I know there's differences in this group, so I decided to tell everything, not starting from another slide. Okay? Do you have questions to that? Similar? You're smiling, so I know that it's very easy for you, of course, but not all of you, so okay. Okay, so you can find some examples of our functions. We times 10, so this value is returning. Okay, you can create some variables, initialize and return using, of course, identifier. So if you are not familiar with programming languages, so you can compare how we can use it. Of course, sometimes if we want to faster finish our application and application but function, but if there is no returning value, we can use return but without any value, just return and semicolon. Yeah? Questions? Yes?
Since I haven't ever used C++ or Objective-C, I only use simple C. Does this program is written in one sheet, or is it like a Java where many files?
Okay. In general, in Objective-C is much better to put every class into, it's not obligatory, but it's recommended, into different files. But of course, you can do that in selected, of course. Yes. It was also recommendation that much better is to put function into different files, because it's much better to compile them and create library. Okay, because using Archive, you can create libraries, static library, and each function is represented by one file. So it's very easy to replace in that library just function implementation of the function. Okay, so try to use separate files generally, because it's, of course, it's for program not, but if you want to create library, it's much better. Okay. What else? Some declarations and some information how we can use variables, blocks. Okay, what is block? Block is just area bounded by curly braces, used to group comments. Generally, Java, C, C++, Objective-C is the same. So you can see that this is one group of some programming languages. Okay, body of the function is the example of the block. Of course, the body of the class in C++, also, or body of the class in Java is also a block. Yes. So you can see here how we can run this. So this, you can see some functions, the main function. According to the difference will be in C++. Generally, we can use void here. Of course, we can use void in Java, but here will be the list of the array of strings in Java. We can use in that way, or we can put two parameters, first representing the size of the array, and the second the throw asterisk pointer to character array to pointer of characters. Okay. Next. Okay. We can call main function after that. This function, we are calling this function here, so we are here. After that, we are here. This is returning value for that, so we can see what will happen. So we are passing, you can see 1, 10 to that. The sum is returning value, so we see 11. Here, it will be stored in Z. Okay, I think that is very simple how the application works. Okay. If someone is not familiar with programming languages, you can be much more brave and ask me some questions. Because if I will go further, it will be not very easy. Okay. Next. The most important is that each function, especially, should be has to be declared before they will be used. Okay? So the declaration is before definition, and declaration is before calling the function. So the best idea and standard was that we should first declare function, after put definition, and we can use these functions. Okay, there are some very well-known functions in C language, and we can use them in C++, but much better is to use different solution in C++. We can use print to print some data, and the structure of this print is described here. So we can see that we can use some format and some in other elements, different list of arguments that could be passed to this print function. Okay. First of all, format includes some format specifiers, subsequences beginnings with this percent character. So you can see some examples. Print, hello everybody, yes, yes. And you can see this is some field. %d means that we want to put here the integer value. This value will be stored here, y 4 will be stored here, and this is the result. Okay, so when you want to format, print is also good defined and could be used in Java. So if you are familiar with Java, you know that there is also not only print line, print, but print also for formatting strings, formatting output to that standard output string. Okay, print in Java is defined in print stream class. Okay, so some information about Java, you know about it. Okay, so here there is some example what kind of print could be used: %d, %i, c, etc. And you can see what is the meaning of it. Of course, much better is to use documentation, so I will show you how to do that. So d, integer, I also signed decimal integer, O, unsigned octal. Okay. I can distribute this slide also if you are interested, so maybe it's not a good time to have enough time to describe all this list. Okay, for floats. But of course, sometimes we want to see the address, so we can use p for pointer. Of course, because there is a special meaning of %, so if we want to just %, we should write 2%, some characters into this crazy first time if you are doing that, but of course, it's only one possibility. To change the meaning of % is to add % before it. Okay, this is the biggest structure of this section, %. There is flag with precision, length, and specifier. Specifier well described in my previous slides, so you can know that also this option you can add flags with the precision and length. Like here, minus less justify, plus forces the result with a plus or minus sign. So whereas justification is default, so if we want to justify to the left, we can use minus. Of course, if the field have a specific width. Okay, with number. Okay, you can use also asterisk when if the width is not specified and will be done during runtime. Okay, it's also very funny maybe, but sometimes is useful. Okay, precision we are using for floating types. Okay, precision because sometimes we want to cut to 2 digits, for instance. How to find documentation? Because it's not easy maybe to use all this information about this build print function in C language and Objective-C, of course. So the best idea is normally use a manual for that. So there is a section, in the section 3. Section 3 is documentation of some programming functions. Okay? Of course, if you are not familiar with manual, it's good to know that pressing Q, we can exit manual, enter, we can see next line, next not line, but next page, space, next line, and sometimes we can use arrows. Okay, because manual is responsible for taking some manual and show to us, but for presenting part, less or more comment is used in this kind of systems. Linux and every system that comes is just Unix-like system. So less we can use arrows, whilst in more we can do only one direction, the next line or next page. So this is from my pictures taken from my operating system. So we can see that when I call man minus s3 and print, I will see something like that. So I can see that print is element of standard C library. This is standard library. So generally it's automatically, when I'm compiling our program edit, minus L is the library, this is C, because we know when if you want to use some library, the library name should start from lib, followed by the name. So if we want to use math library, the name is lib m.a, for instance, we should use minus lm, because m is only one letter after this prefix. Lib is a prefix of this library. Okay. Hash include shows that this is a standard location of the header file. Okay, header file consists of declarations of our different functions. Okay, so declaration is stored here. I talked that when we want to use some function, the function should be declared. It means that we should, for instance, do it on our own. It is our own function, or we can add, include, yes, add the content of this file, because this file consists of some declarations of functions. Okay, some information here about synopsis. Like in my presentation, const card, asterisk format, and some extra parameters, arguments of this function. Of course, you can see that there are some different similar to print functions defined in C. So in standard C library, like fprint for reading content for files, sprint, snprint, etc. This is a declaration, as I called it before. So if you want to use it, we should add this before our program. This is declaration of our function, whilst another declarations are stored in that file. What else? Okay, when we want to run this, we can use GCC compiler. We can use the same compiler in Objective-C. Okay, I'll go to that later. Minus O is output. This is the name of our program, and this is the source code. Okay, so this program will be compiled, after that also is a process to associate our compiled version of our program with some libraries. So the element, the compiled version of print will be added to this, and we can create one application. And after that we can run it. Sometimes it's really good to change this declaration and add ANSI and if no build to be sure, because as you know that the standard of C language was created in 1998, but C language exists has existed since the 70s of previous century. So for 20 years there were no standard, the general no standard. It was kind of standard, but so there are different implementation of this compiler. So if you want to be strict and want this compiler not to accept some extra features, but to check compatibility with ANSI standard, you can use this ANSI option during compiling process. And no built-in functions will be also used. So we can use the functions taken from standard library. It was information about print because it's very useful to show some data to print some data. The second function is scan. In scan you can see that we can send as parameter here the address of our variable. So this is address of our variable. If scan with this address can store data taken from standard input into this part of memory. And you can see the same letter like it was in print. D for integer, F for float. More documentation also available in our manual in scan section, so we can see this is the structure of this kind of information about scan. You can see another similar to scan function like fscan, sscan, etc. If you want to read more about it, you can just use this documentation. Also, you can see that when we want to use scan, also we should add this line to our code to add the content of this header file. Because this header file consists also of a declaration of scan function. Here you can see print scan. So because there is no \n, so we are still in the same line. So scan is waiting for the value that could be written by us using the keyboard. After that, when we press enter, we are here, and the system will wait for another value. And as the end, you will see this on the screen. Percent %d is x, second percent %d is y, and the last is multiplication x by y. And we will see, of course, we can see \n, so we are going after that to next line. To do that, we can compile like in the example. Questions? No questions. Comments. Also, there's some difference between C language and C++, especially that in C language only first possibility according to standard is available. whilst in C++ we can use also double slashes also. Okay, so everything between this slash and asterisk will be treated as a comment, whilst here starting from double slashes till the end, all the content is omitted. So it is some difference here. Okay, this is maybe funny example. Sometimes it's a good idea to show some funny examples. So in C language, it will be treated like here. So you can see this is not the command in C language. So it will be treated first character slash. This is a command. So for semicolon, then plus z. So it will, after analyzing in C language, it is 2 lines. Okay? Division line by 4, and this is just nothing because it's just a value you do not changes. So x is initialized by this value. It's in C language. Whilst in C++, it's only that. Yes, so the sum of y plus z. Well, I think it's a funny example, so to show you that sometimes maybe it could do some changes to you when you are using comments. Maybe not in the specific way, but sometimes maybe it will be useful if you want to check compatibility with C or C++ language. It's up to you if you want to use it. Okay, now next part, maybe not so very interesting part, maybe, but I have to say something about it. Okay, some statements: eval, switch, loop, forward, do while. The most important is that in bool exists in Objective-C. In C++, we can use something that is a Boolean value. Also, the best, in my opinion, is in Java, because it's a Java type, Boolean that could be used, it is useful for us, because when we compare 2 different variables, the result is only the results in Boolean type in Java. Whilst in C, C++, and Objective-C, okay? Of course, there are some extension, bool in Objective-C and C++, specific different types, but generally 0, integer value 0 is a false, meaning of this, and non-zero is a true. So -5 could be true in any statements. So, for instance, we can use it in our languages like here. Okay? True, yes, comment. So, this is a modulo, okay? X modulo 2, and this value is true when it's an odd number. Okay, so we can use it in another language like Java. We should add here not equal, okay, 0. But in C, C++, and Objective-C, we can do in that way. So it's good to know about it. If you are familiar or not, please follow it. Okay, so odd number and even number. We can use it because the meaning of the integer for statements. Okay, so we know how to use the even statement now. We know what is true and false in this statement. And of course we can see here there is a block. So if there are more than one comment that could be part of this statement, we should add braces, okay, and create a block. Here the block is not needed because it's only one comment. 2 comments block. This is also maybe funny. Else. This else is associated with that if or the first or the second case. What is the answer? Sorry? The first or the second one? You told that in the first one. Could you speak up? First, second. First, we're talking that second. So you can see that it's not so easy sometimes. With first or the second? Who thinks that with the first one? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Second one? Okay. So majority thinks in that case majority is right. So of course the second one. Okay? So please think about it. Okay? So, but what to do if you want to associate this as with the first if? The idea? Good. Very good idea. We can put into block. So the second is put into block. So it means that the level is different. So this else is associated with that first possible, if not first, last possible, but in that case it's first one. Okay, because it's in another level, part of that one. Okay, so this else is associated with first one. Very good. So please think about it also. Okay. Next, the use of switch. The use of switch is very funny because there are some differences in many languages, but you can see something like that. Okay, so we are here. You can see probably this code good. Switch, we are analyzing this value, case 0. So we are going into this element. So if you want to stop processing it, we should write break. Okay, like here. Case 0, case 1, case 3, so case 2, break. Okay? And default. Default is like else. Case 0, you can do this and exit from this part. For 1 here, you can exit, and default if it's not 0 or 1. Different value. So we are in default. This break could be added, but it's not needed, okay? Because it's the last possibility, so it doesn't make sense to add this break, but in many books you can read that it's a good idea. So you can follow it, or you can just remove it. But you can see, sorry for my phone, you can see there is some difference. Okay, this example shows that, for instance, in a C language, in C++, if x value is 0, only one line is displayed, and we can exit from this part. If this value is 1, we can hide this, and you can just also exit. There is no break, but this is the last case. But in Java, the solution was different. Then this line will be displayed and the second one. So think about the differences. There are some different also versions of Java, but generally it was true that when we are going into, doesn't matter if it's case or default, we can process these comments until the end of this block of the switch or first break comment. Okay? Whilst in C it was only for cases. Okay. Sometimes we want to process some comment if the value is 1 or 2. So this is the best idea. Case 1, case 2, print. Okay? Your value equals 1 or 2. Because we are going into this and we will process all these functions until the end of the case. Because we are not in Java, but in C, C++, or Objective-C language. In this C family languages. Loops. In Java, loops now are much better, I think, than in C languages, especially for some Java.util structures. But in C, we can do in the standard way. So you can see first field, we can put 3 into I variable, then we can check if it's less than 10 because it's true. So we can process this comment that is managed by this for. Okay, so we will see this value of this. So we will see 3. Step 3. Okay. After this, we can use operator of increasing by 1 of this value, against here, etc. Very funny is using in y. Here we can do something like that. Y I minus minus greater than 0. Okay? So we can go from 6 to 0 in this way. Okay? We can also think how not to use this operator, but if we can remove it, you can see that it also will work in C language. Because we are going to 0, 0 means false. So we don't need to use this operator in C language. In Java, it's obligatory. Okay? Good. Okay. Another loop, do while. I think that the best idea for the use of do while generally in C language and Java is to use when we want to process some comments only once, but if it will be failed, we can repeat this process. For instance, we want to comment to some remote resources. The idea is to download some data, but if we have a problem with it, we can repeat this process. So do while is the best for this. So while and for is better when we want to process some many times some block of functions, but do while only once, and we can repeat if it fails. Okay. Next. The question works as value after, but you know it. So now we can go back much more because we are familiar with any elements of C language from now. So we can go to part 2. Okay, in part 2 we can start from model view controller. What is model view controller? In model view controller we can distinguish 3 different groups. First is model, some data structures, view, how we can present it, and controller, how to change some state There are some actions of user, press some buttons, it means press some controller. Okay? So we can distinguish three elements: model, view, and controller on, and interactions is presented here. Another pictures for MVC, model view controller, is here. So model provides data to the view. We can show results from view of this data, so described by model. User can generate events, press something. He or she uses controller, so we can do some changes to data described by model. Okay. In other pictures, and maybe this is the last, the most interesting. So of course, view, user actions, controller, see something, press something, actions, change value, model triggers to update some view, maybe another view, okay, etc. So, do you have questions for that? So, we can see some examples. Clock application. So, for clock application, the current time is stored in model view of controller. This question. Sorry? Model, yes, because model means data. Structure of data and, of course, the data. Very good. To unlock the iPhone, you have to slide a slider. Yes, so what is? It's model, view, or controller. Okay, not. You can see some view. So this is a view, because you can see that, okay, so you can press it. But if this view is associated with controller that is responsible to change some data, or do something, okay, change it to another view, okay, very good. Okay, contact application, information about users are stored in model, view, or controller. Okay. Calendar application, the current day is drawn in blue by view. Okay. Just a moment. When you touch the arrow, we have calendar application. What part decides to change the month? In that case, control, yes, because we are sliding something that is element, graphical element. It means that is view, but it's associated with controller who is responsible for some event handling. Okay?
When you said that the current day is drawn in blue by view, isn't it the controller who makes the day blue and just the view displays?
But controller is not, okay, controller because the function that could be associated will be called from view. Okay, yes, because view means everything that has graphical structure.
Wait.
Graphical structure presented part means view. So data that could be presented is stored from the model, but the way how it's presenting means view. So when we are touching some graphical content, we are touching the view, but this view will send information to controller that it was touched. Okay? And it means that controller will be responsible for handling this information. Okay?
But the view doesn't work like a static user interface.
Yes.
Just displays things.
Yes.
So whatever happens on the screen, the controller is responsible for. For example,
Yes. So controller will be
there's a
associated
reason that
with
this day is blue. I mean, it's a reminder, or it's the current day. So it's the controller who gives the signal to you to make it blue.
Are you familiar with Java, more or less?
No,
So we can see some buttons, yes?
yes.
So buttons is just a graphical component. It's not else, okay? So it means that it's according to that view. But we can associate it, so we can connect this structure with event handling by add action listener to this button.
So
Okay?
that you have the capability of thinking in a way. I mean, it's just not
No
just a
thinking.
controller.
Nothing. It's just for displaying something.
No.
Okay? But the functionality of it is done by controller. Okay. Phone application. When you click a contact, what is responsible for the phone? Like in credits, controller. So this is content, but it's associated. So okay, we can connect one to another. Okay, in web application, the icon of the sun are shown in, of course, you know that is video. Good. Okay, so you know what is model, what is view, and what is controller. And now some elements, simple elements about Xcode. Okay, oh wow. I will start it and I will do some breaks, okay? But if we want to create our Objective-C application, we should have Xcode. Without it, it's not possible. Of course, we can use GCC compiler, but it could be GCC that supports Objective-C. Of course, this GCC, the best idea is that is GCC that comes from Xcode. So if you have Mac and you can install Xcode, of course you will have GCC that supports Objective-C. Okay. The best idea is to have access to laboratories and to practice it, because it's just listen to this will not be interesting. So create a new Xcode project. I can show it in some minutes. Okay, so we can start Xcode, press something about project, and we have some possibilities. We can create application for iOS or OS X. So laptops or phones, iPads, etc. We can start from application from OS X, so command line tools. And first example looks like here. Okay. And you can see something that is similar to C language that not include, but now import. I will say, so what is the difference? Then you can see main method, main function, and like in C, we can send information, we can get information about from command line, about how many argument was passed to this main, and the list of these arguments in this array, represented by this array of char asterisks, because there are strings, in fact. I prefer solution that is done in Java and C languages, but you know how to use it. You can see also auto-release pool is very funny. I'll also say something what does it mean. And this is another method that could be called in Objective-C that is similar to print, but the meaning is completely different. Okay, and return 0, 0. So this line is well known, this is not well known, this is well known, and import is not maybe. The result of this application was shown here. Hello world. Displayed on the console. I will say something about NSLog later. Now you can see another possibilities. Division into some different files. So you can see, we know this is similar, this is the same like in C language, because we know that declaration could be done many times, but definition only once. In header file, generally we can store declarations, but not only. We can also store in header files definition of types, definition of structures, structure types, definition of types by the use of type def. Okay, we can put also some constant values. Okay, also, but it's definition. So to be sure that this file will be used only once, we can do something like that. If and def some value, we can define this value. This value is defined and ended. So if this file will be added twice, if and def is not true, so we are after and if. This and if is associated with if and def. If and def and if. Okay, it's part of the language. That is really that is often used in Objective-C also. Import this specific header file of foundation. Foundation is an extension for Objective-C that different classes, structures exist, and we can use it. Now you can see interface, randomizing, NS object. This is a class. This class inherits from this class. This is a part of foundation, and this is information about interface. This is in C language, C++, Java, we can say this is a method. Yes, and this method is returning integer value, and we can send parameter range that is int type. Okay, and this is end of interface. In header file, we can define interfaces. Implementation is done in the separate file, and you can see the extension for C. The extension is .c. For C++, generally, what is the extension for C++? Sorry? CPP, okay. But .m is the extension for Objective-C. And you can see import, declaration. We have to import. What is different between import and include? Generally, there is only one difference. That in import, we can be sure that this file is added on, is stored only once. Add to our program before it's compiled only once. So in fact, if you are sure that we are using import, not include, we don't need to start with that. Yes? So import and include has the same meaning, but the difference is that we could be sure that this file will be added only once. Okay? This is returning value. As for random is a file. It's a function done by Apple, also in foundation. So this is implementation of this class. So we have to implement this method, and we can use it. So we can create main.m, which is our application, and we can start with this main, returning value. This is auto release full. We can mark some code for what was the biggest problem in C language. It was the problem with allocation of memory. Okay, in Java we have something that is called garbage collector. Okay, so we can create some references, and we don't need to bother about what will happen with that. But in C it is a very big problem. Yes, we can create the array dynamic in some class. We can create the constructor, etc. And there's a problem: what will be created? How to release this memory that is not used by us anymore? It was a problem in C++. So I will tell something more about it later, but auto-release generally means that everything that is here will automatically be released when the references is not used. Okay. And you can see how we can call the object in Java, so in Objective-C. Randomizing unlock previous, and now we can access to the object represented by the pointer to this class. Then there is for loop, well known, and we can call the method, but in Objective-C we are not calling method, but we are sending a message. This is funny. This is message, and this is value of this message. Object represented by this pointer. And we can use print because we know how to use print. Questions to that? Okay, it's funny, but I will describe later. So, I think that we can do some short break, maybe 7 minutes, and I will start at past. Okay? If you want to
Carlos Rodríguez. Está la que quiere ver un ¿no?
It's a Objective-C. Objective-C. Okay.
So that's why I'm asking. So you
Objective-C plus some extensions. I know that there are some extensions, so we can create applications for making it generally. But for iOS, I think that without some special retrieval passage, it's not possible because there are some extra elements. Yes, but This is very funny and very easy. I like men. I can also some elements from different books. I can distribute to you or to your colleagues. Yes, and you said something. So maybe the first will be someone who say to professor. Because I know that we can do some fun because we don't want to see because it's because my first application in Java was not from the lectures but from tutorial. I got some code and I was okay, and I did because it was a problem because I was okay, I don't know how to do that in tutorial. Okay, I can find, oh, this is code, I can trade, it works. So I can adopt it, change something to my code. But after that, in one night, I was much better in Java than after some lectures for the whole semester. Because
this is how it works always.
Yes. But I will try to say as much as possible, but later I can say some codes for laboratories, and maybe we will have some time to do that. But I can conduct lectures about Java also, to show something, because it's much better in the case that we can install, for instance, NetBeans or I prefer iCubes to program Java in Java. So, but thanks. Okay. The biggest problem is that people have no practice with using Xcode. This knowledge is not useful. Okay, so I will prepare something, and I think the good idea will be, okay, we can do tomorrow. It's really hard because you cannot practice it. So. I show some.
So you can't write applications for
It's possible, but it's very hard to do that. First of all, you should generally you can think first possibility is just to use GCC and try to find some extension for Objective-C, some libraries, etc. It could be possible to find it. It's not very easy, but you can do that. And you can try to start writing some applications, but not for iOS, but rather for Macintosh, for laptop, for this system. Some graphical applications.
Virtual machine or Well, if you have a virtual machine on your computer,
Yes, is the second possibility. The second possibility is to use, for instance, VMware or another. VMware is good enough, I think the best. I'm sure now. And you can install Macintosh, but installing Macintosh on your not Macintosh computer is possible according to rules only if you are owner of Macintosh. Okay, so if you have one Macintosh, you can install another Macintosh in virtual machine. According to rules. Of course, you can use the virtual machine that is created by someone else and available on the internet. But you are not installing it, so you are not breaking the law. But I'm not sure. It's possible. Maybe yes. The second possibility is to download the system that is similar to Macintosh. But not, in fact, Macintosh, but is how to say, something that looks like Macintosh. Because Macintosh uses the OpenBSD license, so you can also use this different kind of semi-Macintosh system, but of course you can install Xcode. Okay, if you are installing the specific Macintosh, not official Macintosh, but another one, you don't have the possibility because of rules to use Xcode and install Xcode from Xcode, because you will break law. But you can go to the web page, download Xcode, that is free of charge for Apple developers, so you can register as a free developer without possibility to store your application in App Store, but you can have possibility to download Xcode. This is not taken from App Store, so everything is okay. And now you can install it, and of course everything is correct. So we're now so but the simplest idea is just to
first thing you should install Macintosh, but the Microsoft if you have
first possibility.
I have a very old MacBook Pro,
Okay,
2008.
good. So many.
It doesn't work.
But maybe it means that you are on Macintosh, so you can install this kind of version of operating system of your virtual machine. Right. And this is okay. So I get back now to this presentation. Now we will start with much more funny examples. But you know that the biggest problem for you is not to have the practice. So I know that maybe soon your knowledge will disappear. The best idea if you want to program is just to write program. If you want to learn how to program, you should write a program, because if not, it doesn't make sense. Okay. So I know that the number of students will decrease soon, much more. It's normal. So what to do? I can send this presentation to you. I can send some elements for library. So if you will have time, you can try to read presentation, my own, or I can add some extra presentations also. Plus you can do some labs. How to do that? First of all, the best idea is to, the only one possibility, in my opinion, is to download and use Xcode. Without it, it doesn't make sense. Xcode is available free of charge if you are developer, kind of developer, and now as a student you can register on a page, and you don't need to have the paid access because you don't want to pay for the possibility of the use of App Store because maybe later you want to do that, but not now. Okay? So first possibility. How to do that? Okay, you can install Xcode, but if you are okay, who has Macintosh computer? Okay. So generally, this course will be good for free students, you know, and we can do some practice together. But if you are not Macintosh computer, it's really hard to create the application. The best idea is to download Xcode, but Xcode could be installed on Macintosh or Macintosh-like operating system. Okay? Because you are not owner of Macintosh, it's really hard. You should install Macintosh operating system as a virtual system on your Windows or Linux using, for instance, VMware. I have bad experience with VirtualBox, but VMware is good. Okay? So, you can do that. But, according to rules, when you want to create your own image of Macintosh, you should have your own Macintosh. I don't know, and you should check what is about rules not to break law if you download existing image of Macintosh operating system. Try to check because I don't know. So it's up to you. Okay? There are many different resources, many different images for VMware, not only for VMware, that could be that you can use. But I don't know. Maybe also there is in rules information that you should have your own Macintosh. Okay? Maybe not. I don't know. Check it on your own. There are also some different operating systems that are Macintosh-like. Looks the same. No, maybe not the same, but they are very similar. Even if they have App Store installed. Yes, so they are semi-Macintosh operating system. I know that according to rules, you can use it because it is something on the. It is very strange, but people who decided to create this semi-Macintosh system read very carefully the rules for this operating system, and because the operating system bases on Darwin, OpenBSD, it's OpenBSD in fact, so it also is, there are some different, I don't know, because I'm not interested in that, but because I have Macintosh, you know, but there are some different rules for this operating system because of Darwin, OpenBSD, etc. I know, and I'm sure that one, maybe not only one, but one important thing was that you cannot install any applications on this same Macintosh computer from App Store. Okay? You cannot. But of course, if you register previously as an Apple developer, you can not install from App Store, but you can download Xcode from web page and install. And it should work, and it's not breaking a law, general law, so you can try. So I can show something to you, but I know that without computers, it's just presentation, but not just work with real applications. So I will show you today and tomorrow, and we will think what to do on Wednesday. Okay. So you know that in Objective-C, class definition has two parts: interface and implementation. Yes, interface and implementation. Interface looks like here. So class name and superclass name. Then there is some declarations for variables, and after this block, method declarations. Okay? Example we can see here. So NS object is the, like in Java, object is the class that all classes inherit from. There is NS object, this is from foundation, so this is a specific classes of Objective-C. So if you want to create a class that is Objective-C class, you should inherit from NS. Person, age, and a string. You can. I will say something about this in other classes, but you can now you can see prefix NS is a specific prefix for all different classes that are available in different April libraries. Okay. So person, class name, NS object, superclass, 4 fields have been defined: number, age, name, and city. We can see interface and end. This is end of that interface. So we should add this line end. Another interface. Accumulator also inherits from NS object only one field, and you can see 3 different methods: add total, and 0 total. So you can see no returning value, void, int as returning value, and void returning value. Much more, it is described here. Now you can see also minus and plus before the name of this method. Yes? Minus for non-static method declaration.
May I ask? Amount is an argument for the add total.
Sorry?
Amount is an argument of add total.
Yes, but in Objective-C you can say that it's not argument, but it's the message.
Okay.
Okay, but looks like argument. Okay? And this is method. In fact, it's a kind of message that we can say. We can, during this message, send some information. I don't remember. It was taken from probably Smalltalk. I have not familiar with Smalltalk language, but Smalltalk is also objective language. But when I was a student, my professor was very fan of this Smalltalk. It was before Java, some years ago, and it was operating the programming language that was fully objective. So Objective-C was thinking as fully objective language, but not like C++, some elements. So they tried to take some elements from Smalltalk. Okay. For me, sometimes Objective-C is very crazy. It looks different, but strange, but okay. You can see name of some methods, add total, 0 total, and parameters like amount. For this case, we can say something like that. So, implementation. So you can see implementation also start from implementation and end of this code. And you can see 3 methods are implemented now. Add total, amount, total equals total plus amount. Okay. Then total return total, return value, and zero total set 0 to total. Nothing else. Okay. Implementation, of course, we know that should store in file with m, .m extension. Okay. So this is interface. This is implementation. Different files. Like here, you can go back to this one. You can see this is implementation, header.m, header.h. This is the interface and implementation. The most important also is that in Objective-C, objects are created on the heap. This means that when you create an object, you will receive a pointer. So all the time retrieve the pointer. Not without the pointer, but with pointer, because we will get the pointer. Okay? So all the time we are working on pointers. When you want to create the object. Object is represented by pointer to some memory. Okay? Then this is okay, information about this. Okay. So, yes, I was right. It's motor. Remember that. So when we want to call something, in fact, we are not calling method, but we can say, call it that we can send message. So we receive a message, and in our ACC is the name object of the object represented by the pointer, in fact this pointer, and total is the message. So the calling looks similar to the calling the method at total and send some value as parameter, but we can say that we can send this message at total and value is 123. Okay, we can do also something like that. Okay, next. So messages and methods. Of course, we can use also everything that is in C language. So we can just create also. So we can use malloc, calloc, or another C functions. But these elements are generally extension for C. So everything starts from NS means that could be created in a specific way. So, because it's not C++, but Objective-C, so, just a minute. So when we want to create the object, we can do something like that. Alloc is, we can say, message sent to class. So alloc is with the class because it's class method, not method for instances of the class. So it's static. According to another terms, we can say that it's static. Okay? Alloc allocates the memory for object. Okay? But this method is done for this class. Where is defined alloc in NS object. So because of inheritance, we can call this method. So this method will create the structure in memory. Okay, but this structure is general structure per class. Okay, so alloc. init, you can see, returns a pointer to the non-initialized object. So init is starting with minus because it's method, not class method, but method called on object to init this object. So first we can create structure general of object, then call init to have real object that could be that we can use from now. Okay? So it's maybe funny, but we can do that in that way. Okay? And now we can go to, you can see in the right corner, memory management. MRC, manual reference counting. Manual done by us. We have different possibilities in Objective-C. So I will first start for that, and soon I will show how we can do that in another approach, automatic reference counting also. Okay, so like in the first sentence, so we can create our object. Okay, if we can go the address because there's a pointer to this object. The problem is who is responsible for releasing the memory associated for that object. Okay, so in that case, if we want now, you know in Java what is reference, and in Unix what is reference. One structure in memory and different references. Okay, so in Objective-C we have also area in memory, and we have pointer. Pointer, the point to this memory. When we call ACC return, we can increment the return count. So like we will add another reference. So counting is increased by 1. Okay? You can imagine that it's similar to hard links in Unix. In other links. So this system will remove this memory when the number of links is 0. Okay? So ACC retain means that we want also send information to the system, is retain, that we will use it in this part of life. Now we are sure that no one will remove this object from memory in another memory thread, because we can create multiple applications. So it could be complicated, but we can know about it. Okay? Okay. If we do that, so we can increase this value, now we can release. So we don't want to use it, so we can send the message release to this object. Okay? So it's decrement the number of connection to this connection. How many is not reference, so but looks like reference in Java. Okay? Association to this memory. So do you understand it? So you can use release and before return if you want to be sure. And now some example, vertical code method. So we can create it using our init. We can do that. Return without releasing this object, yes, some object. So we don't do that. We can close this method, but this object is still in memory. So we should change this code and of course release it. Another possibility, there is a specific class NSDate. We can send message date to this class, and you can see we can get some value, but there is not stored in our code. So we can use it, but the problem could be in multi-thread applications, because this object could be released by some another code. Yes, because we have not take some ownership for this memory also. Okay? So we can use it because we are now in that code, but if there's one thread, there's no problem. Yes? Because we could be sure that our method is called now, we can do that, and maybe later this object will be released. But we don't take care about it. But if another thread is working on the same code, maybe somewhere this structure in memory is released. So now we have a pointer to nothing, to release to some area in memory. And as in many C codes, we can have problem with access to memory that is not associated with our object. Okay. Next, you can see this is another example. We have some class that inherits from an object. We have pointer to guitar, another class, and we can set guitar. So we will get as a message of parameter for you the pointer that is associated to guitar. So we can do that, but it's not okay because this object is sent as a message. So we are not owner of this object. Yes? So what to do? How to change it? If you want to change it, the correct code in Objective-C looks like in green part. So we should replace this red part by this green part. Okay? So we can check if first element is associated with object. If yes, we can release the previous object because we don't use it, want to use it. Then associate with that was sent, delivered to us as a message, and take ownership of this. So now we can imagine that it looks like that guitar, our identifier, is the next reference to that structure in memory. Okay? Okay. What do you think about it? Looks easy or okay? More or less.
Shouldn't the if statement end on the second line of this if? For example, if a guitar is not retained, how will it retain if it's not retained?
Okay, very good. Okay, if the object is not if the reference, this identifier is not associated with the object, it means that this value is in Objective-C nil. Nil is like null. But the nil message is always true because it means that this message will be ignored. Because you are sending information about nothing. So release for nothing will do nothing. Okay, so it's not wrong. Because in C language, especially from for delete in C++, you should check if the pointer is pointer to something. If the pointer is not to something, you couldn't do delete operator for null. Okay? But you can do that for free. So if for free pointer null is okay, because free will ignore in C language. So this is like in free in C language. Because call and malloc in free, once you have new and delete in C++. So there are many similarities between among these languages, but there are also some differences.
Would there be a problem if you don't use if you don't check if you don't use you don't check the validation?
Okay. Well, it's a good question, but you can see what we are checking now. We are not checking if the feature is nil, but we are checking if the message that is sent to us is the same like the message that is stored in our code. So because if it is different, we can do that. We can release, yes, but we don't. When I remove it, so over time I will remove it. So if I'm sending the pointer to element that is already okay, so in memory, and I can remove it from memory, and after that I will associate with the object. So in the situation, if it was only one reference to this, I will remove it, and I will send reference to nothing. So it's much better to do that, okay? Of course, if it was associated and the number is less than 1, so greater than 1 is okay. Because I can remove it and have enough. But with ones, it is not good, because I can remove it once and it will be completely destroyed from memory. And after that I will have pointer to message that I have not owned to it because there is no in memory.
So if there is no reference, it is instantly deleted the moment you release the last reference.
Yes, it will be removed. Similar to garbage collector, but it's not garbage collector. Okay.
When we said before that we called for a pointer to bring the object into this method, is that right? Did I get it? We created a pointer before. Guitar, we created a pointer before. The previous slide.
This slide?
Yes, guitar after guitar.
Uh-huh.
So
We can associate one identifier with the message. Okay? Here. So we can got something and we can associate this one with that one. Okay?
So we send the pointer to bring the object inside the method.
We send the
Identify.
I don't understand you. I don't understand the question.
Since we create a pointer,
Yes.
this is a pointer, isn't it? The guitar.
But we are not creating a pointer here. Pointer is okay, pointer object. Pointer is the representation of the object.
Yeah.
So pointer will be delivered only when someone is creating it, or we can call the method init and out. Yes. It's only one possibility to create object. So allocate init will send us a pointer. So object is created, and we will got as result a pointer to that. Okay, and the one I have now reference to this one. But sometimes I want to send this object to another and keep it. And if this code I'm not using it, so ACC, we are after the block, so it means that the number of references to this area should be decreased by 1 because there is no access from this code. So the system could release it, remove it from memory. To keep it, I should use return to tell that, okay, but I want to have the still existing connection to this area and increase the number of connection to this area in memory. But in this way, not this one, first, I only can store this value, but maybe in another code, this area could set the number of connections 0, so I have connection to not existing object. Okay, so I should check if this message is the same like my message. If not, I can release this previous because maybe it was because you can read that first time I do retain. Yes? So if I do retain, I should do release.
Otherwise, there is
Because previous one object was associated, I told system that I want to have ownership of another connection, so I should remove it, this association. To let system remove this from memory, decrease the number, and associate new with my identifier and take ownership for this new. Release the previous one, take new and change ownership. Okay? So, AACE is automatic reference counting, and in our code you show that my idea is not to use this specific solution. It's good sometimes, sometimes not, it's up to you. But if AACE is turned on, in my Xcode is, you cannot call return, release, return count, auto release, or deallot. Okay? And please compare. You can go back to my examples. So you can keep in mind that auto release pool is switched on. So this is a part of AACE. So not manual, but AACE, so I can use init, but I cannot use retain, etc. Okay, because it's another management system switched on. So in Objective-C you have different solutions, but first is it was manual reference counting, release, retain, and the best one, new solution, is AACE, automatic reference counting. Okay, it was introduced in Xcode 4.2. So how it works? It works that the system, it doesn't work like garbage collector. Okay. What is difference between, I don't have possibility to use retain release, you know about it. Now, comparison, garbage collector works during runtime in Java, yes? Automatically the number will be added, but automatic reference counting works during compile time. What does it mean? It means that the Xcode is analyzing my code and edit automatically messages for retain and release. Okay? So it is not done in runtime, but the code is analyzed before and some lines are added automatically.
Can you give us an example where manual reference counting is necessary?
Maybe it's hard to say.
For example, I don't see a reason why we don't use every time automatic reference counting.
In my opinion, the best idea is, of course, it's my answer to switch this automatic reference counting. But sometimes, because it's a solution, it's the analyzing of this code was not done very, how to say, there were some bugs, okay? So if you don't want to be sure that the system will create good messages, will add properly messages to your code to release and retain this memory. So if you are not sure, you can switch memory management on. If not, the best idea is, of course, to switch automatic down and be sure. I know that because it was in Xcode 4.2, now we are using Xcode 6. So in Xcode 4.2, automatic was suggested, but as default was manual, because there were problems with memory management, and the best, you could be tester of this API solution, but now, because of some years of some improvements, we can be sure that rather automatic is the best and is recommended to use it, of course. But if not, you can switch on and of course you should have some previous application that was created before. So in that case, you should switch it off and use it.
Okay.
Garbage collector, at least the way it works in Java, I think that it removes a lot of responsibility from the coder, that it does automatically all those things.
Yes.
Yes. I mean,
You're right.
it makes some assumptions about what you're supposed to do or something like that. It may not be work like intended, maybe. I don't know.
So when we are talking about Java, I think that I really like garbage collector because it's a very good idea, I think. But of course, you should in Java code, not in Objective-C. You can all the time, if you want, make garbage collector check memory. Yes, because you can code garbage collector in Java code. Because
I think that's the whole point of higher, like more abstract languages, to remove this extra hassle from the programmer. I mean, that you don't have to allocate or.
because the best idea is for programmer to concentrate on the code, algorithm, but not all the time how memory is allocated, and if now we can. If we have access to this part of memory, maybe it was released or not. So I think that much more complicated in C, and because of that, I think that programmers took too much time to concentrate about memory allocation than on algorithms. So garbage collector was a good solution done by Java. That was language, and I like this language much more than Objective-C, of course. Sorry, it's true. But I think that this solution try to do something that is similar to garbage collector. The problem of garbage collector in Java sometimes is that when you have much areas in memory allocated, and you program, okay, garbage collector as a thread also needs some memory to work, okay? So sometimes if there is the lack of memory, your application in Java could hang, and it's not good. So in Java also is recommended, if you are not using some elements of memory, you can allocate, you can set your variable to null. Okay, it means to remove reference to this part of memory. If you create different structures in your memory, for instance, some arrays, vectors, and different structures containing a big amount of data, but you don't want to use it, the best idea is to set the reference to null, and after that, call garbage collector. You can make garbage collector work. It will analyze which area in memory is not a reference to your object, yes, and will remove it. After that, you can, of course, also next lines allocate memory by your big amount of data to some different structures. So you should think about it, and it's much better. It does not need to only concentrate that garbage collector is the best solution over time, but try to know that it's good, but you can also improve your code, but set it to null, make the garbage collector work, etc. But it's working in during runtime, whilst in automatic reference is the extension to add some lines to our code before the program is created. So different approaches.
Setting aside the memory used by garbage collector, what's the best for the application of the system? The garbage collector method or the ERC?
Because garbage collector is not supported by iOS,
In a system that supports both.
there is no choice for you. The best idea is to use RC, not GC, but no garbage collector. But generally, what is better?
Is there another?
I think it's very difficult to answer because there are different solutions. First is to create the code and add some elements to be sure that some elements was in good time, was released all the time. Another solution is to have a special thread that will analyze it during working. During runtime. Different solutions. I think that first maybe could be best, but of course because of maybe the solution will be the best when we are sure that the algorithm analyzing our code will be perfect. So because we are not sure, maybe sometimes you will have a problem with, like in Microsoft Windows, many times, maybe not now, maybe also now, but in a very old version of Windows, allocation of memory, the resources, the memory completely, yes, because of that of code. Yes, how it works, how the system works. So garbage collector is maybe not the best idea because it takes time and also use resources, but it works. We can be sure that if something is not used, yes, all the time it works.
But if you have a perfect code for calculating where you have to release and retain
it could be, but it's optimistic version for that. So, okay, Google and Android uses Java. Okay, why IEEE uses this Objective-C? So, I prefer Java generally than Objective-C, but because I was a fan of Apple devices, also I was interested how I can create applications for them. And but if I want to create just program to work, I prefer Java. So Java Enterprise brings different frameworks for Java. So Java is my famous favorite language. But of course, if you want to create that application for iOS, you have to use this language. It's a strange language, but could be used. Okay. Okay, because we will finish today soon. I also can. Okay. Do you have questions to this part? Not questions. No questions. Okay.